Hey everyone, Tyler here from OpenPython. So in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the print function, and honestly, this is one of the most important functions you're going to be learning as a beginner. So I like to think of print as the window into what Python is actually doing. Without print, your code just runs silently in the background. Python might be performing calculations and storing values, making decisions, but you can't actually see any of it happening. The print function effectively allows you to display information on the screen. So for example, you can print, hello world. And then when Python runs this line, it displays the text inside the quotation marks. Simple enough. But print is used for a whole lot more than just, displaying messages. For example, back here, we have the score of a game. So our score is 100. We can get Python to print that number along with some text. And then you can see it'll output your score 100. So this is one of the most common uses of print. We use it to show information directly to users. Another really important use is debugging. So debugging simply means finding and fixing problems within your code. Let's say we have a variable called x is equal to 10. If we do which is 10 equals x equals 10 times 2 now makes x 20. If you're going to do further maths after this, you're able to print as you go, and we can check the value of x at different spots in the program. This will help us to confirm whether the code is doing what we actually expect it to. And trust me, once your programs start getting larger, you'll need to use print all the time to figure out what's happening behind the scenes. So before we jump into the exercise, there's something important we need to understand. Python treats text and numbers differently. For example, if you print hello Python, I'm learning using quotes, here we're printing text. Quotation marks tell Python this is a string, which is Python's name for text. On the other hand, if you go print 42, it's going to print a number. Notice there are no quotation marks there. This distinction matters because Python handles them differently. For example, printing 5 plus 3 yields a number, gives us 8, because Python performs the calculation before printing the result. If we type 5 plus 3 with quotation marks, Python treats it as text. It doesn't form a calculation because of the quotes there. So if you want Python to treat something as text, use quotes. If you want Python to treat something as a number, don't use quotes. Now let's move on to the first exercise. So here we've already been given the code that we need, but before running it, try predicting what you're going to see. Which line will be text? Which line will be a number? You can see the first print line here has quotes, so that'll be text, then a number, and because it's got no quotes, and then quotes again for the text. If we run that there, you can see each print statement appears on its own line as well. This is because every time print runs, Python automatically moves to a new line afterwards. So let's look at something else that's really useful, printing multiple items at once. So for example, you can print the string name : string Alice, string age, and then the number 25. Notice how we've separated everything with commas. Python automatically inserts spaces between each item. That's why we don't need to manually type spaces everywhere ourselves. So now let's also look at two optional settings that print supports. So the first one is called sep, which controls the separator between items. So for example, if you go print Alice, Bob, Carol, you can make the separator commas, you can make it dashes, you can make it no separator to combine them all together here in this example. But by default, Python is going to make the separator just a space. You also have the end here. So normally print finishes by moving to a new line, but we can change that. You can set the end to just dots and it will stay on the same line. So by default, the end is set to a new line. Another common use of end is printing a list of items on a single line inside of a loop, but you'll see that in more detail later on in the course. So now let's move on to the second exercise. The goal here is to output score 100. The lesson specifically wants us to pass the label and the number as separate arguments, and we already have our print function here. So in this case, all we're going to write is, well, first we have our string, which is going to be score, and then, sorry, that's maybe a comma, and then we want our number, which is going to be 100. So if we run it, there is our output. This is simple, but it's actually a really, really common pattern you're going to use throughout the course. So the main thing I want you to take away from this lesson is that print is your way of seeing what's happening inside your program. You will use it to display information, test your code, debug problems, and understand how Python is behaving. In fact, you'll probably use print more than any other function for the next few lessons. So make sure you get very comfortable with it because you're going to be seeing a lot of it. So anyways, that's it for this lesson. I'll see you guys in the next one.